Friends of the Family, Episode 7. The sky above Planet Xylos was a deep, swirling shade of crimson and amber, a stark and unsettling contrast to the familiar electric violet heavens of New Metropolis. Located in the outermost rim of the immediate universe, this distant world was a rugged frontier of 11th millennium technology. Towering spires of jagged, crystalline rock cut through the atmosphere, wrapped in a chaotic web of flickering neon bypasses and rusted magnetic tracks. Here, there were no polished white porcelain buildings or sleek corporate offices. Automated cargo pods rumbled heavily through the canyons, their thrusters kicking up clouds of metallic dust. It was a world that felt like a wild, untamed racing simulation, a place where the rules of Earth felt incredibly far away, and survival depended entirely on the coordinates programmed into a person's wrist. Inside a hidden, hollowed-out crystalline cave overlooking the lower scrap terraces, the 6 teenagers stood in a tense, silent circle. The initial rush of their sudden quantum escape had completely faded, replaced by the heavy, cold reality of their situation. They were completely isolated, millions of light years away from their homes, with limited digital tokens left in their personal databases and no safety net to catch them. Ethan Harrington paced across the uneven stone floor, his high-tech silver jacket coated in a thin layer of crimson dust. His face was set in a hard, stubborn scowl. "We aren't going back," he said, his voice echoing sharply against the crystal walls. "I don't care how low our power cells get. Back on Earth, our mothers completely erased our history." Sarah and Keziah chose to rewrite a decade of family struggle just so they could share a peaceful kitchen. They didn't think about what it would do to us. They didn't honor Thomas, and they didn't honor the truth. "We are on our own now," Jackson nodded aggressively, leaning against a glowing power terminal they had clumsily wired into the cave's natural energy veins. "Exactly. My mother spent my entire childhood acting like a hypocrite, preaching about loyalty while hiding her own secrets. Then, in a single morning, she throws all that history away. If they can just reset their coordinates whenever it's convenient for them, then we can do the same out here. We don't need their broken legacy." Chloe sat on a smooth rock, her arms wrapped tightly around her knees. Her expression was filled with deep anxiety. As one of the more sensible members of the group, the sheer risk of what they were doing was starting to weigh heavily on her mind. "Running away to a rim planet is one thing, Ethan," she said softly, looking up at her brother. "But look around us. We have no shelter, our wristwatches are running on reserve solar grids, and this planet isn't like New Metropolis. There are no planetary wardens keeping the peace here. We are completely exposed." Lily stood beside her sister, her eyes darting toward the crimson sky outside the cave entrance. "Chloe's right. We're teenagers, not seasoned space explorers. We're letting our anger dictate our coordinates, and it's putting us in a very dangerous position." Zuri walked over to Caleb, who was silently inspecting the localized data interface on his wrist. As dedicated believers, Zuri and Caleb had always been the moral anchor for the group, but the intense emotional trauma of the previous morning had blurred the lines. "Caleb, we need to think about this clearly," Zuri pleaded politely, her voice carrying a gentle urgency. "We prayed for peace back at the church, and we promised to keep everyone safe, but this environment feels completely wrong. We are stepping away from the light." Caleb sighed, his expression conflicted as he looked at Ethan and Jackson. The anger of the group was contagious, and the survival instinct was beginning to cloud his usual polite judgment. "We can't turn back now, Zuri," Caleb said quietly, his voice hardening slightly. "If we teleport back to Earth, we're just consenting to a system built on hypocrisy. We have to stick together. Out here, the only way to stay safe is to make sure nobody messes with us." Act 2, the formation of the syndicate. Ethan stepped into the center of the cave, a reckless, dangerous spark igniting in his eyes. He raised his quantum wristwatch, projecting a glowing blue holographic map of the local sector. "Caleb's right. If we're going to survive on Planet Xylos, we can't act like scared tourists. The local crews out here respect one thing: strength. We need to stop being just a group of runaway kids. We need to become a unified front. We are forming our own crew. An elite syndicate. A gang The word hung in the heavy air of the cave like a physical weight. Chloe gasped, instantly standing up from her seat. A gang? Ethan, are you completely out of your mind? We are from a respectable home. We don't do things like that. That is an incredibly dangerous path. It's the only path, Jackson interrupted, stepping up beside Ethan. Think about it. The local supply stations operate on unauthorized data grids. If we lock down our own coordinates, establish our own territory over the lower scrap terraces, and reroute the automated cargo lines to feed our energy cells, we can live completely free from the Planetary Council's laws. We call the shots now. Zuri shook her head, her face pale with worry. Jackson, that is wrong. Rerouting cargo lines and taking territory by force isn't just survival. It's defying every moral standard we've ever been taught. We are supposed to trust in a higher path, not resort to creating a syndicate to overpower others. We tried the higher path, Zuri, Ethan shouted back, his frustration boiling over. And it resulted in our mothers making a mockery of our childhood. Out here, we protect our own grid. We are the sector outlaws now. Caleb, are you with us? Caleb looked at Ethan, then at Jackson, and finally at Zuri. The immense peer pressure and the collective anger of the boys were overwhelming. Desperate to keep the group from fracturing and convinced that a strong show of force was the only way to keep them alive on this hostile planet, Caleb made a misguided decision. He stepped forward, raising his fist. I'm in. We lock down the territory. We dictate the terms. Chloe, Lily, and Zuri looked at each other in utter disbelief. By nature, creating a gang was an incredibly risky, dark storyline, and the girls knew deep in their hearts that this was an absolute mistake. They could foresee the trouble, the danger, and the inevitable consequences that came with a life of defiance. Yet, because they were young, naive, and fiercely terrified of being left completely abandoned on a distant alien world without the protection of the boys, they found themselves completely unable to break away. Their naivete and loyalty clouded their better judgment, forcing them to silently acquiesce to the dangerous path the boys were dictating. Fine, Chloe whispered, her voice trembling with a mixture of fear and reluctant submission. We stay together, but this is a very bad idea. Act 3, Falling Off the Deep End. With the syndicate officially formed, the teenagers quickly began to slide down a slippery slope of reckless behavior. While the story remained strictly family-friendly and safe for a 13-plus television audience, the art of inference was used to show just how far off the deep end they were starting to fall. Later that evening, under the dark amber sky, the group materialized via a coordinated quantum jump directly onto a high platform overlooking the central automated supply depot. The depot was a massive, humming structure where unmanned hover trains arrived from neighboring planets, loaded with high-grade energy cells and digital credit modules. Bypassing the local authority was a severe violation, but the boys were no longer listening to reason. Ethan and Jackson knelt near the primary data terminal, their wristwatches interface pulsing with a glowing red override code. They weren't using physical weapons or causing overt harm, but their actions were clearly indicative of a crew establishing its planetary distribution grid, rerouting a minor stream of automated cargo pods directly toward their hidden crystal cave. This is it, Jackson whispered with a dark grin, his fingers flying across the digital panel. The local wardens won't even notice the data drop. We're securing our own future now. Standing a few paces behind them, Chloe, Lily, and Zuri watched the terminal bypass with a sense of profound dread. The atmosphere felt thick, heavy, and completely devoid of the peace they had once known. Every flash of the red override light felt like a step further into a dark world from which they might never return. Look at them, Lily whispered to Chloe, her eyes filled with tears. They think they're being strong, but we're just becoming the very thing we used to despise. We're breaking the rules of the entire universe. I know, Chloe replied, her voice barely audible over the hum of the hover trains. But if we leave them, we're entirely alone out here. We have to find a way to make them see sense before the local security forces lock onto our coordinates. Zuri closed her eyes, silently offering a desperate prayer for protection and guidance. Please bring them back to reality, she whispered into the wind. Before they fall too far. Suddenly, Caleb turned back to the girls, his face illuminated by the unauthorized red glow of the overridden terminal. The transformation was subtle, but the pressure of the syndicate lifestyle was clearly changing him. "The reroute is complete," Caleb announced, his tone lacking its usual polite warmth. "We own this sector's energy line now. If any local crew tries to claim these coordinates, they'll have to go through us." Ethan stood up, looking out over the vast, glowing crimson canyons of Planet Xylos. The teenagers had successfully formed a gang, establishing an unauthorized territory in the Outer Rim, completely cut off from the families who loved them back on Earth. They had crossed a major boundary, choosing a path of defiance and survival that was rapidly spinning out of control. As the automated hover trains roared past into the dark, amber horizon, the 6 teenagers stood united in a dangerous alliance, their faces masked by the neon glow of their wristwatches. They had officially fallen off the deep end, setting up an intense, high-stakes conflict in the stars as the episode reached its chilling, unresolved conclusion under the alien sky.